Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm so happy I'm back in Malibu, back in the hood, back with all my belongings, which I know it just grounds me so much when I'm just surrounded by the things that make me feel really good. And we all know that in times like this, we have to find those things. We have to cherish, we have to have those rituals that really connect us to ourselves because so much of the things that normally pleasure us, that make us feel good, have been taken away. So it really is the time to just connect to how can I make myself feel better? How can I have some pleasure and still live in these, excuse me, these guidelines that we're living in during this pandemic? And we are certainly by no means out of it. Even though a lot of stuff is opened up, it's opening, it's closing, it's opening, it's closing, the numbers are rising. We still have to be very grounded and we have to be responsible. And we have to take care of our spirits. We have to take care of our souls. We have to take care of ourselves. And that is one of the reasons I'm really excited to be sharing with you today this amazing woman, because it's number one, during this pandemic, she's really doing great business. So kudos to be able to do good business in the middle of this pandemic. And she's going to even talk about it, where she's even sold out of her product because she's exceeded her numbers. Okay, but what touches my heart is that she's doing good. Like, she's doing good for her community. She's doing good for the world. And for those of you that have been watching conversations with my people over the last couple of months, you know that what really gets me excited about entrepreneurs are when they are really grounded in their consciousness and authenticity. And that is one of the things that were glaring to me in the conversation when I had with Hannah Diop, is that she's literally grounded in her roots, her upbringing. She's very fortunate to have an upbringing with, I would say, awakened, conscious parents that brought her up in a very holistic approach in life. And she's taken those rooted ways of being and has integrated it into her entrepreneurship journey. This woman is very smart. Yes, she has gone to Wharton Business School. And she even told me before this that she felt a little bit like a dolphin there amongst sharks. So what she was telling me was that I know how to adapt. And all of you know that have been watching is that adaptation, I say, is my superpower. And this woman has that. She's the CEO. She's the founder of Sienna Naturals, which is an amazing all natural hair care. So let's bring on and welcome Hannah Diop.
Thank you so much, Lavinia, for your gracious and generous introduction. I have to say this because it doesn't happen often, but your pronunciation of my name was flawless. Hannah Diop, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, so before we start, we always like to get everybody sort of grounded in a couple of big, deep breaths. So, okay, everybody, you know what to do. We're going to inhale, big, deep. Let's make these like big, full of love. Okay, 4 breaths in. We're going to hold for 5 breaths, and I'm going to exhale, ha, ha. Okay, so let's start. Inhale. Hold your breath and smile. Exhale, ha. Inhale, love. Hold your breath And exhale, ha, ha. One more time. Inhale, love. Hold your breath. Exhale, ha, ha.
That's great.
Good. I know, I just love to connect, right? It really helps us just ground and just connect to what we're going to hear and what we're going to talk about in the conversation. So, Hannah, I always say that we'd like to start the entrepreneurs talking about their origin, their story of origin. And so with you, like I said in the introduction, you were brought up in a very holistic, natural, elevated, awakened environment. So take us through a little bit of that and then how that came into your entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I love how you, in the introduction, you mentioned roots, because I really think of my hair care system as root to root because it's plant-based and it's going into the roots of your scalp. But I think it also speaks to the origin story, because I always say I felt like my company has been a part of me since I was a child. And I grew up in a very naturally inclined family in Minneapolis, in South Minneapolis, Minnesota. We were members of community supported agriculture. You know, my house was the pickup spot for the organic produce. My parents would go and work on the farm, very much believed in natural, clean, organic products. And my mom was so conscious about what we put in our bodies and on our bodies. And I also had a lot of sensitivities as a child. And so she sought out alternative care and practices in addition to traditional Western doctors for us. And so I saw a naturopathic doctor for my allergies and sensitivities. I saw an acupuncturist. I saw a chiropractor, all as a child and teenager. I had a massage therapist, like a standing appointment with a very good massage therapist in high school. And that was just so helpful. I remember getting my wisdom teeth pulled out, and there was, you know, natural herbs that I would put on my gums, and there was lymphatic drainage processes that would help aid that. So it was really very much ingrained in my upbringing, and lifestyle has been very much informed by that. Just really being natural and being conscious of what you put on and in your body, but then also noticing that what you use, even when it comes to beauty and skincare, can actually have wellness outcomes, help you have better wellness outcomes for your hair and for your scalp. And then I would also add, you know, growing up in Minneapolis, I was one of very few Black children in my school. And so my hair was very different. And now my mom was white, and she felt strongly that my hair was beautiful as it grows out of my head, which is absolutely the right. Thank you, Mom. That was perfect. However, being different was really challenging. And so, you know, I would get teased for my hair for being wild. And then eventually, when I was about 10 years old, we went on this family trip to Kenya, East Africa. And there, these young girls that we were staying with asked, like, why don't you perm your hair? You don't know about relaxer perm? So it was, ironically, I went to Kenya, East Africa to learn about relaxer, and came back, begged and begged and begged, pleaded my mom to get us relaxers. And at the same time, I was also on the swim team, in and out of the chlorine every day in the harsh Minnesota winters. And sure enough, she caved, and I got my relaxer treatment. And my hair did straighten more easily, but it also went limp. It was extremely unhealthy. It was broken. It was damaged. And so, you know, we just had this difficult journey trying to navigate and understand how to both, like, practically care for my hair, but then also for me, how to really appreciate and embrace and understand and love my hair as it grows out of my head. You know, whether I want to wear it straight or wear it in a different style, but just that emotional journey, and then also the practical journey, also informed the business. So what I noticed is, like, I am not alone. You know, 60% of women in the US have textured or curly hair. And so every woman that I've ever met has a story of similarly learning how to navigate both practically and emotionally their hair. And so I thought, you know, why isn't there more product? There's all these products on the market to get your hair to do what you want it to do, to straighten it, to keep that curl locked in its perfect hold, but there isn't a product line out there that really is helping inform you of how to care for and nurture your hair and scalp, and doing it with clean ingredients that might actually improve your wellness outcomes and therefore your style outcomes too, because it'll give you a healthy foundation. So that was really the goal with Sienna Naturals, kind of taking all of that and producing a line that would outperform competitors, that would compel her in the shower. You know, I understand like natural hasn't always meant efficacious or luxurious. And so I really set out to set the bar higher for clean products and do that with a focus on treatment and care first.
I love that. Because also natural doesn't always mean really effective.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you've really been able to bridge, which is really just so brilliant and so genius, because I love natural, you know, and I'm really that person that I really believe whatever, you know, you put on your skin, you really want to almost be able to put it in your mouth, because 60% of that is going to end up in your bloodstream. So it gets in there.
Right.
So, you know, but I also love to have, you know, you want your skin to look as great as it can, or you want your hair to look as great as it can. And your products really get that. The treatment works. So they're very effective for natural. But what I want to ask you next is, I really understand how challenging it is to actually get a product. You know, most people don't know this, but I mean, you know this, but people out there don't know, like, okay, so I want to make this product. Usually what people do, they go to a lab, they do a little research on the different labs, and then they find products that they already have. And then they go in and say, okay, let's just tweak that product. Let's add a little lavender, a little sage, a little turmeric, and now we have this product. You know, you didn't do that. I mean, you went out, number one, and you really used your brain and did an amazing amount of research, and not just like nationally, you went globally to look at what medicinal herbs, what medicinal products, what are they using all over the world. And then you went and you really did the research, and then you looked at how actually some of these would work together. And then you found a lab. Like, take us through that journey, because most products are not like that out there. People that are watching that know, like, what she's done is really very, very, very special. And I know it had to be incredibly challenging. So take us through that, because I'm really like, you're my hero for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Honestly, it was in a way forced upon me to go this route. So I set out and I started with a trade show. I went to a global beauty trade show. I was living in New York City, and I met with different manufacturers, and I said, this is my vision for what I want to create. And they were like, okay, you know, who's backing you? Who's behind you? I'm like, oh no, I'm bootstrapped. I'm doing this myself. And a lot of them just honestly didn't want to do business with me. And it was too small of an opportunity. They didn't see the vision. They didn't buy into it. And so that forced me then to start formulating on my own. And so what I did was I was setting out to solve problems, right? So I start with the research to understand what are the ingredients found in nature that will address some of these issues. And I think for me, I found that researching the histories of various like indigenous populations around the world and what they use to bring the wellness to their culture, to themselves, plays out to be true often. This is a wisdom, a historical wisdom that's there that, you know, I've learned to tap into for Sienna Naturals. Also looking to different skincare, clean skincare lines, and what are some of the natural ingredients there that are really effective, and have that sort of empirical and evidence behind them. And so then I was formulating, and I realized, I don't know if the first thing about chemistry and formulation, like, yes, I can read and I can research, but how do I get these products to actually function and be efficacious and feel great? So then I brought in a cosmetic chemist, and we still work together. And we, you know, in my kitchen in New York City, 3 hours a day on Saturday, every Saturday we would formulate. And I was lucky to find someone who's so passionate about what she does and really believes in me and my vision too. And then it was like finding a manufacturer who, yes, sees this as a small, again, this is a woman business owned manufacturer who's like, I believe in your vision.
Mm.
And I know I'm not going to make any money off of running this line for you, but I believe in you, and you're that entrepreneur that just gives that, you have that spark. And so she believed in me, so she took us on. And so what I would do is I would source everything from the suppliers, you know, send it there, pay her for the labor and the product, but I'm bringing, you know, probably 30 plus different suppliers all to the same place. And you can't start if one ingredient is missing, right? So you've got to get the timing right. Like logistically, it's a whole operation, and you have to be kind of an expert project planner to get it, to pull it off. But doing that has really paid off, because I've learned so much about product formulation and about ingredients and how to understand the chemistry of how they work together. And then also I've been able to own the formulas. So now I can work with anyone. If, you know, I choose to, I can go out and work with anyone. So it was, I call myself an upstream founder. So like, I think the story you were explaining, it's like the downstream founder. It's like, you know, you come, you take the product off the shelf, you tweak it and you sell it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, you know, if you have a vision and you find the right manufacturer, that's great. But I had to start really upstream. Another benefit that came out of that was that, you know, I'm going to, you know, now I'm sourcing everything myself. So I'm asking my suppliers, okay, if you're in Senegal, West Africa, which by the way, my husband is half Senegalese. My father-in-law is from Senegal. We still have family there. It's very much, you know, a part of our life. If I'm sourcing from Senegal, well, who am I buying it from and how are they treating the people there? Because those are our people. So I also had the benefit of saying, okay, I will buy from you, or I will buy from whomever has a great price and is paying their labor a fair wage. And not only just because you tell me you are, but because you've been able to show that through third-party verifications. So I guess, you know, because of this, because of being forced to kind of do it all from scratch myself, I've been really able to build an ecosystem that's not only for my end user and my consumer, but also for and giving back to and making sure I'm taking care of the indigenous people who are sourcing these ingredients many times, most of the time in the wild.
I love that, because that is conscious. Like when people say, oh, Lavinia, what do you mean by conscious entrepreneur? This is what conscious entrepreneur is that you really are thinking about the whole, how whole, it's the holistic approach to all of it. And I love that and I admire that. And I know that it's not easy to always have those points, because it takes time, it takes energy, it takes more work, and it actually takes more money. So,
yes,
but what I love is that you're so committed to that vision. You know, it's like, I really feel that from you, that you're not wavering, like you have real clarity on who I am, what I'm doing, you know, good for my community, good for women, good for the world, you know, and to stay on track of that, it's admirable. And take us a little bit, because I know you also told me before you had Sienna Naturals, you kind of, it took a few times to get there. And I know that because a lot of people don't know that before we had Equinox, we had another gym called Westchester Health and Fitness.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to get in there, kind of understand the business a little bit, learn from it, maybe learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, now we're ready for the big time. So it's a very similar trajectory. So take us a little bit. Actually, take us from before, because you were in corporate America.
Yeah.
And a lot of my audience knows that, especially because I mentor a lot of young women, I'm very much in favor of that trajectory after college or after higher education, to go and work in corporate America. And I always feel that it's because the training, there's really great training that I'm not sure you'll get anywhere, especially not in startup situations. So take us a little bit through when you graduated, and when you went on to a more corporate situation, and then that moment when you knew, I'm done with this. Like, I'm ready to pivot into that, and what that pivot looked like.
Well, okay. So yes, so Wharton, I feel Wharton was a very challenging experience in many ways for me, and also a very wonderful experience. Most of my like closest friends in life have come from that experience in school, and people who are advising and a part of my business today. And so I'm grateful for that, but it was challenging. And like you mentioned, I always say I was a dolphin in a shark tank. But then I had a mentor point out to me once that dolphins kill sharks. And I was like, oh, ooh, meta, meta moment. So coming out of Wharton, I was lucky enough to land a job with McKinsey and Company, which is, the premier strategy consultancy, where you're coming in, you're doing really high level, like C-suite executive level consulting projects to really help guide Fortune 100s, Fortune 500s, governments on where they should go in the direction. And McKinsey, I mean, honestly, it was such an incredible experience for me because I really felt the trust of my colleagues. I could have honest conversations. I never felt like I couldn't have, I never felt like super politicized at McKinsey. I felt like because there's this culture of feedback constantly, like once a week you're going to meet with your team and with the leads on the team, and they're going to tell you what they think you did great and what they think you did not so great. So on a weekly basis, you're hearing about yourself, and where you need to make improvements, and you're expected to like pick up and go. And although it's quite painful, it can be intimidating. I think it's really meant to help build you and develop those skill sets so that you can learn to, as they say, fail fast and grow quickly. I think the other benefit of McKinsey was that I'm walking into these client situations and immediately the client is looking at McKinsey to come help solve a problem. So, and these are big problems that they need help with and they need help solving. So you just feel compelled to do your best work, which often means working a lot of hours and really dedicating your time and your energy to helping to solve those issues. And how do you figure out what resources within the firm to leverage or what resources you need to hire in to bring in to help solve the problem quickly? It's also the pace is very fast. And so that was just an excellent opportunity where I got the chance to be valued instantly by my colleagues, by the client, and then come in and solve really difficult problems. And sort of I think it built the skill set in me, which it very much informs how I design product now for Sienna Naturals. As I'm starting I start to understand who's my customer, what's her lifestyle, what are the problems or what are the issues she's having, and how can I build something for her and fit it in a way that feels seamless and feels helpful, to make her life easier with managing her hair and improving her wellness outcomes for her scalp. And so I think that was just an incredible experience to have to help inform this.
I love that. I love that training of fail quickly, grow quickly. I mean, it's just amazing. And so you realize you're doing that, and now it's like ready to get in there. Like now you're getting ready to like, all right, I'm going to do this. Take us through, because we have a lot of young entrepreneurs out there. Like, what were your first steps? Like, how did you say, okay, I'm taking off that hat, that entrepreneurial hat, and now I'm putting on my entrepreneur boots.
Right, exactly.
You were booting because a lot of it was literally
bootstrapping.
Yeah, you're bootstrapping it. You're doing it very lean and mean. So how did you transition? And were you doing both for a while?
Well, no, well, what I did was I realized like the consulting track was great. I felt like I had gained a ton. It felt like the pace and the, traveling constantly and working really long hours, it wasn't something I wanted to continue to do for the rest of my life. And so I was sort of looking to ramp down. And so I started to do some non-consulting work for McKinsey, still working for the firm, and kind of just starting to think about what are my next steps going to be. And I started to poke around in the beauty industry because I knew I wanted to do something in the beauty industry, as we've discussed. But I thought, okay, well, maybe I should just go get some more corporate experience from a beauty company before I go and try to do this myself. But what I quickly realized was that they wanted me to come in a strategy role, which would be excellent. Like I'd learn about M&A and kind of where I'm probably aspiring to go with Sienna Naturals, like when we get so big that I'm going to need it to bring in a strategic or some other type of financing. But it just didn't feel real enough or close enough to what I wanted to do, which was actually the product design and creating something for the consumer. And so, and then on top of that, you know, you'd be asked to sign a non-compete. And many of those were at least 2 years. So then it's like, okay, if I get the training, then I have to wait another 2 years to actually go out and do what I want to do. And so I realized at that time, like, I believed I'd had enough business training, formally through my education and through my experience and work. And I just started. And so I went to a trade show, and at this trade show, there was a company that was doing a seminar on how to start your own beauty brand. And so I kind of took that blueprint, and then I just sort of followed the checklist,
Wow.
to be honest.
And what year was that?
That was it must have been 2012 or 13. And so originally what I wanted to start with was a company that was creating clean and natural products for mommy and baby. And so the problem I was really focused on was the instances of eczema with Black and brown children. Black children have higher instances of eczema, scalp issues. And my sister had had children. I hadn't had any children at that point, but she had, and she found it very difficult to find efficacious products when she was shopping at like the local health food store. And so she was like, you know, this feels like I've just washed my hair with Castile soap and my curls are going to break. This is not helpful. It's dangerous for my hair to use this supernatural soap. So I was like, okay, we've got to do something that is with her in mind. And then my niece had eczema. So I started with that. But what I realized, you know, being a bootstrap founder and having $0 for advertising, it was difficult to find women who were pregnant or new moms and get their attention and get them to purchase from a brand that they'd never heard of. And around that time, I think Honest Company was also starting to come out. And I was like, wow, she's got me in spades with the publicity and with the, you know, she can just really enter this with a force. And in addition to that, you know, I was getting customers that were like, I love these products. These are so amazing, but I don't have kids yet. I don't know if I can use it. And I was like, no, that's not the point. The point is to be as clean and as pure and as safe as possible. And so then I pivoted from that to more of a personal care line that wasn't totally specific. And so I was selling that in small boutiques, natural food stores, and in markets in New York City. So every Saturday I would go to the market and sell. And I started to have repeat customers, and I would get feedback from them like, well, you know what I really need? Like, I'm starting this new exercise routine and I'm feeling like my scalp has been doing this and I have to get ready for work, or I'm working out during the week. How do I protect the style that I have? How do I manage my scalp in between washes? And I was like, oh, you know what we really need is a regimen that looks after the health of your hair and your scalp around, that's tailored to your lifestyle and really built around that. So that's the third iteration where I am today. Of the brand. So essentially I pivoted a couple of times, and then this one has really hit spot on because it is it is a white space opportunity. It's a needed product in the market.
I think, yeah, right on. And let's talk a little bit about the pandemic, because during this time, share with, you know, the audience about how this time your numbers have even escalated to a point where I think it's even a bit surprising to you that, and so what have you learned during this process?
Well, I think, you know, really this pandemic has been a time for everybody to go inside and kind of your quarantine. So you're with yourself, you're by yourself. And I think everyone's sort of turned to, how is my hair and how's my scalp actually feeling? You know, rather than focusing, because you don't have to be in the office, you don't have to be in front of people necessarily. So you're not as concerned with the final look. You're prioritizing what is the actual health. You know, we all know that our immune system is going to be our greatest defense against the COVID-19, right? So like people are really serious about looking after what they're putting on their face and their hair. I think they're just genuinely also, there's this new wave of concern for the health of the hair and the scalp and the skin. And it's all tied together. So I started to see the numbers go up, and I was like, oh, wow, people are really tuning in and getting excited. And And I hadn't planned, because my plan was to launch in July, like this month. I wanted to launch and do a big direct to consumer push. I have a new look and feel that's coming out. I'm increasing the product size, a lot of exciting things going on. So while this increase for demand is going up, you can also guess that supply chain is going through some constraints. But I mean, the love that I felt is just incredible. And then on top of it, we have the Uprising that started, and I think it's awakening another level of consciousness in consumers, right? Because I think part of my story, I never really lead with the story about being independently Black woman owned, creating an ecosystem out of my supply chain, making sure that health and wellness of my consumer comes first, because I wanted her to understand that they're effective. Like when I see brands and the reason to buy is because they're using a cooperative, I think that's a great reason to buy. But I'm trying to push the envelope a little bit and show you that this is about having a super efficacious, luxurious experience that is going to improve the health of your hair and scalp. You're going to love it. And by the way, it's when you start checking under the hood, you're going to be excited about what you find. And so I think like there's this new storyline, like being an independently owned, Black woman owned brand. I think consumers are going to start to understand and care about that. I'm starting to see that. So we'll see if this is something that lasts, because usually it's the big, brand houses that launch and put a face with the brand and but maybe that face doesn't own the brand. And so I think, the time feels like, pretty aligned for me right now, given where we are and the consumer consciousness, where it seems to be heading.
And I love that. And I love, but what I love the most is that you are a woman who has so much integrity, and I think there's so much value in that. It isn't just like, oh, the time is great to do this. This is going to be like the Me Too movement. Let's everybody get on that train.
Right.
There's something deeper than that. Like this is like that. You're like, again, you're so rooted in this.
Yeah.
You are so committed. You're so passionate, and your products are a reflection of that. So
thank you so much.
I would say it is, you are perched at this point for great success, and you've got a couple things that are on your side that are even shining the light, onto the commitment, the diligence, the hard work that you put in. And that's where I like, those are the brands that I reach for. Mm-hmm. Those are the brands that I reach for to use. Those are the brands that I sign to be an angel investor in, because I'm not a person that's going to get on the train just because it's a hot movement. Yes, it's something I believe in, and I believe we need to be helping, women, Black women, Hispanic women. We need to be elevating and leaning into that. But I know for myself, I'm not going to lean in if the product is not great. And that's what I love about you. Like there is that integration of beauty, of holistic, of intelligence, of hard work and grit. Like you have all the boxes that for me, that I'm like, dang.
Thank you so much.
Because that's really important. I respect that. Oh. There's so much to be respected for in that journey. And it's like you said, it's like you were saying, like Wharton Business School, that was like painful. But when we go through that pain, that's when, like, I don't care what it is in my life. I didn't get to be the Lavinia I am today because of all the high moments. Mm-mm. Like I got to be the Lavinia I am today because of the things that were painful, that were hard, that were arduous, that I had to buckle down and just, at times I was gripping the wheel. Mm-hmm. And then other times you're just breathing through it and you're learning different techniques, how to not grip on life, but to learn how to accept what is and use some of our spiritual principles to do that. And I saw that in you as well. So I think it's such a great testament to doing the work. And now you've come into a place where you've done the work, you were focused, you were committed. I'm sure you've given up a lot of things that other people were out doing in their 20s, vacationing and spring breaks and stuff that you didn't do because you were focused on this. And now it's going to be a payoff. And, it's interesting because so often people will look at this and be like, oh, she was an instant success.
Right.
And you sit back and you're thinking, there's no instant success here. Even though this woman is in her late 30s, she's been on this trajectory of work since she's like 8 years old.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I know that. Like I just know that because I know the personality that it takes. It isn't, I hear so many people talking about people that are just like, oh, they're like popping out on the top in the pandemic. And I'm like, because they're so rooted and what they have is good. And now people have stopped. Like people are stopping and they're able to do a little bit more research. Yeah. They're able to have time to get on the internet. And like, I know for myself, I've been talking about using natural hair color for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. And I guess about 4 years ago, I dabbled in a couple different ones and I had my hairdresser do it. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the way my hair looked. I mean, one time I was very bright orange, and another time my hair got so dried out. Yeah. So I just put it out there and I was like, you know what? Everything else in my body is natural, aside from my hair color and maybe twice a year doing a little Botox. I'm okay with that. Like, it's all good. Everything else is so clean, and I check off those boxes. But in the beginning of the pandemic, when we couldn't get our hair done, I was like, you know what? I'm going to find a hair product. Like I am going to find, because I had the time. Yes. And I went out there and I looked and my husband was like, you've been on this computer for 3 days, like nonstop. And finally, I just kept reading reviews and reviews and reviews and reviews. And I found a product that I thought actually was based out of Australia, because the majority of the reviews were coming out of there. And I know Australians are a little bit more conscious about what they'll put on in their skin and their body and so forth, just by nature. And I got on and I emailed them, and you know what? It's actually out of Europe, but it's an amazing product. And I've used it now like 3 or 4 times. And I don't know, I wouldn't have had the time before this. Right. And I think a lot of people are doing that. We have the time to resource, to find some things that, and maybe we're even becoming more aware, because I think, like you said, Hannah, wellness and health is definitely the new hot. Like people are not thinking about some of the more superficial things that they've thought about in the past. I've seen people who really I wouldn't never call them like a fitness buff. They're not really like loving, and all of a sudden they've put in home gyms and they just realized that maybe they're more comfortable working out at home. Right. And now they're like so enthusiastic. They're so excited. They're working out all the time. Like they're sending me little videos of themselves. So this time has really created some new behavioral patterns. Absolutely. That are really enhancing the quality of people's lives. Yes. And I think that's where your product kind of like fits in there, and yes, what I do like about it is that, because sometimes when you get a product, the feel, the energy of it, the packaging of it, the whole bit, it's like, it's too natural that it almost feels like vibeless. Right. Like it just doesn't have that yummy vibe. And what I love about when you look at your products, you could see I would feel, it doesn't feel, even though it is medicinal. Absolutely. But it still feels like I'm pampering myself. And I think, like I said earlier, I think it's really important for us to take those time to pleasure ourselves a little bit. Absolutely. And do a ritual, and really turn your hair day, your clean day, wash day, into that ritual.
Absolutely.
Because it's something to look forward to. And then when the ritual has the intention of, I'm actually,
Mhm.
this is healthy for me. It's healthy for my scalp. It's healthy for my bloodstream.
Mhm.
It's healthy. I mean, it just gives it so many layers
Mhm.
to just make a woman, and I know your products for men as well, that
Mhm.
women have a tendency to enjoy the whole experience a little
Right.
more, um, as we tend to internalize things. So
Mhm.
it's your the product on every level and every layer is amazing. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you, because I know we talked a little bit uh, yesterday or the day before about how you are a wellness brand, even though your hair and your luxury, and that, and
Mhm.
because of your upbringing, it's really about integrating into your community, your
Mhm.
a more holistic approach to life.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what that might look like, what that might feel like, and on like what seeds do you want to plant for your community for them to feel and experience life on a little with a different lens.
Yeah. Well, I really want to empower my consumer. And I think for me, one of the big pillars I want to bring to bear in this next phase of Sienna Naturals is the education behind it. Just highlighting how Black women, for the similar styling practices of our white counterparts, are contracting breast cancer at a much higher rate. So there was recently an article that came out in Fast Company about Black women who dye their hair every 6 to 8 weeks versus Black women who don't dye their hair at all have something like a 60% chance of contracting breast cancer, 60% more likely to contract breast cancer. And their white counterparts, the number is much lower. So for white women, I can't remember exactly the number. I think it was around 30%, those who dye regularly versus those who do not have a regular hair dye experience. And so the question is, well, why are Black women contracting this at a higher rate? Like, why are we more susceptible to these toxins that exist in our beauty products today? And one hypothesis, and I think this is a new area of research, and I really want to keep track of this, I want to be a voice to help communicate this out, is that because our hair is porous, it tends to be more porous, so it absorbs more of what we put into it. And then on top of that, I think the anatomy of it, as it grows away from the scalp, allows product to sit onto the scalp longer. So it's not falling down the hair shaft. And then, Silent Springs Institute they did a survey and found that I think it was something around 80% of the products that Black women most commonly pick off the shelf to purchase for their everyday hair care routines in some of these big box stores have endocrine disruptors and potentially cancer causing chemicals in them. So for me, it's about like making her aware. One of the another sort of point that I really stand for, because I come from this corporate background and understanding that we alter the natural state of our hair. 80% of Black women feel the need to alter their hair from its natural state for work. 70% of women with textured hair from every background use heat to straighten their hair on a regular basis, right? So this is cutting across all women with textured hair, this journey, again, as I mentioned. But to not know what is in your product and not be aware of when you're making the trade-offs. So if you want to do a relaxer treatment to straighten your hair more easily because you wear it straight most often and that's what you're doing, you should still have an option to have a clean maintenance system for your hair so that the products you're putting on every day are clean and safe for your hair, for your scalp, for your body, and for the environment. And so that's one major pillar I want to stand for with Sienna Naturals, is just getting the awareness and the education out there. And there's a lot of brands moving around in this space now and that are starting clean coalitions. And so we're going to be a part of some of those as well. But I think, we have to take it upon ourselves to educate and to hold that standard. And retailers are doing the same thing. So retailers are starting to get with the program. They're starting to have, clean for standards at their places of business, which is excellent too. And I think it's about, empowering the customer and giving her the clean alternatives.
Well, it reminds me of, I've been the organic girl probably for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And, when I started on this journey, you go into a grocery store and there was like this much organic, very little. I mean, I really had to travel. This was really even before Whole Foods when I
Right.
was living in New York, and I
Oh,
had to literally go up to a farm. I mean, it wasn't easy to be on that trajectory at that time. And I just remember there would be people, and I know that they would watch me walk in and be like, oh, this is that organic quack lady. It's always going to haunt me in the produce section about that. Or, so, and then today though,
right.
even the Ralphs have a huge organic section. And I remember walking into another gourmet grocery store when I first got here in LA. People told me, oh, yeah, Bristol Farms. Oh, you have to go there. Lavinia, they'll have the kind of products you want. And I went and I remember asking the head of the produce department, where's organic? I don't see organic sign. He looks at me and goes, no, we're gourmet. We're not organic. And I was like, it was like, what does that really mean?
Right.
Like, yes, he had this big, beautiful pepper, but if like, anyway, and I never ventured back into that store because to me, it was always like, they're gourmet, they're not organic. But I ended up in there about 2 years ago, and all of a sudden, 80% of the produce is organic.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, that man like really tried to look at me like, why
Right.
would you want organic when you could have gourmet?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was with food.
Yeah.
And that's where it's just starting to grow in the beauty, the skincare, the hair,
Right.
So, and I love that you're kind of taking a more an active role in bringing this out,
Hmm.
because the more people understand this and the more we talk about it,
Yes.
people will stop using it. Like I know when I was looking for hair care for the color, and I would start talking to all different people, they'd say to me, well, in Europe, L'Oreal isn't allowed to use those dyes.
Mm.
Like they don't put those in their L'Oreal products
Right.
there.
Right.
And I'm thinking, but I don't understand. Then
Right.
why are we having it here?
Right.
But
Yeah. I think we have something like we have in the tens of ingredients banned versus Europe is in the thousands. And so I think, it's going to start with the consumer. So my goal is like motivate, educate my customer so she can become a voice. And then it's going to be the brands. Then it's going to be because the chemical manufacturers, the thing I think similar to food, there's so much innovation in food now. You have clean food products with so many cutting edge, innovative things that they can do. You can make keto pancakes that are organic and clean, and you know what I mean? So the companies will figure it out. The chemical manufacturers will figure it out once the demand is there. And so I think that's really what we have to work towards and educating, because the thing is that there's so much innovation all the time in beauty. There's new products, there's new chemicals being made all the time. And it's hard to keep track of so this has the ending of the name like this because it went through what process? Like you really have to follow it back and understand the chemical name and what that means and what is it clean? Was it naturally derived? What happened to it now? Is it safe now? And it's really a journey that it takes a scientist to understand. And so I think, the burden has to be put on the companies to make sure that, we are producing the products in a safe and ethical manner.
it's interesting because when it comes to my face,
Mm-hmm.
because the way I look at it, like, okay, the skin on my face is just this much. It's very small, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm ever going to be a little bad or going to cheat, I'm going to have my cheat. I cheat here.
Absolutely.
But on my body, like I literally use coconut, organic coconut oil is a big jar of it is in my shower.
Yeah.
So as soon as I shower, because the majority of my skin, that's what it's getting. It's getting food grade all over and I'm done. So at least I know like here, even though I am very careful, but I choose like we choose like, and
Absolutely.
we say, okay, once in a while, if I'm going out, which of course I haven't done in 4 months, but then you want to really, whatever you use a certain mask.
Right.
I'm sure there's a chemical or two in there that is not the cleanest, but you're using it on this much of your skin, and it's so, it is making that choice.
Absolutely.
But knowing that the majority
Right.
of it, and I mean, in life, I kind of live by the 20-80 rule anyway. Like,
Of course, yes.
of the time, my food is very clean and I have what I eat. And then 20% of the time, listen, 20 years ago, it might have been a free for all. Today, my 20% is gluten-free pasta, or, these little coconut ice cream. So it's relatively healthy, but it's really, that's what it's about. But people don't know. Like
No.
that, like we just
That's
have
the thing.
the job to educate them, to make them awaken to
Right.
stuff they're putting in their mouth, they're putting in their hair, they're putting in there. So we're going to be ending soon, but I think my final question to you would be, this is for all of the young entrepreneurs or people that are going to be pivoting, because as we keep saying, 42 million people lost jobs and are not going to, a lot of big chunks of them are not going back. So what advice, what 3 things would you give young entrepreneurs or people that already pivot on how to, how to move forward, or how to start a business, or what are the things that you really need to get yourself going in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I would say is try to take some time out and tap into, as much as you can, what you feel called and compelled to do. Because no matter what you set out to do, you are going to have so many ups and downs and so many extremes, for the worse and for the better. But the worst extremes in something that you really don't feel called to do, or you don't feel is helping you live out your purpose or your contribution back, is going to be difficult to continue on that path, I think. So I think it's important to kind of tune in, take time to do that. And you can tune in, take time to do that. I think there's dignity in all work. Remember that. Like, what I loved about moving from New York City to Los Angeles is that, the person everybody's coming here to be a writer or to be a star, or there's so many dreamers here. I'm constantly surrounded by dreamers. You go to Whole Foods, you're checking out, and they're a dreamer person, not a dreamer in the sense of dreamers, but somebody who has aspirations to do something else potentially in the future and really believes that they can, is doing that. And I feel like, there's that feeling of dignity in work here that I didn't necessarily sense in New York as much, because I think there's just so much emphasis put on the big corporate job and, the financier. And so I think, you don't have to quit everything and do everything all at once. You can continue to be in doing something that you don't necessarily feel is what you're called to do, but it's probably teaching you something else. It's teaching you a lesson about patience. It's teaching you about the people you're interacting with and working with. Like, there's value in everything. And I think, so that's another thing I would mention to young people, is that, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think those are two big ones at the moment right now. And then, I didn't know that much about how to start a beauty brand. I really didn't know anything at all, but I knew I could figure it out. And that's just kind of something if I can read, I can figure it out. I filed my own trademark. I never had a lawyer. I'm like, well, I can read, I can figure it out. And so that's kind of a mentality that I've had. And so I think you need a certain level of that, because if I really knew what it took, I might not have done it.
Well, it's interesting because earlier on when you said, when you were working for McKinsey, you were like, we were working so many hours and I really knew I didn't want to work like that forever. I'm thinking like, girl, being an entrepreneur, it just never unplug.
No, it's true. And you know what, honestly, this is so, like, seriously, there's no better Saturday morning than me getting up. My children are doing something else and I get to go and work on my business and kind of do my big dreaming, like planning. I love to work on my business. I love to work on Sienna Natural. So I am doing it. I think it's just more like 15 hours a day for somebody else. Like that can wear on you a little bit, but certainly the path of entrepreneurship is no days off for certain.
Yeah. And I think, the first 10 years you're just so into it. It's your baby.
Yes.
I do think you hit a moment when all of a sudden, when you've been going at that pace and that pace and that pace, I mean, I saw that for Equinox. I mean, those, 10 or 12 years, it was time.
Yeah.
Yes, it was either we were going to hold on and really create a whole senior team, because we
Right.
were very, lean until we sold. I mean, that was it. Like we
Yeah.
were just at the leanest that you could be. And that meant that all of us wore a lot of hats. And after about 10, 12 years of that, it's like you just definitely hit a wall and you're like, okay, but when you're in it, you love it.
Yes.
Love it. Like there wasn't anything more I wanted to talk about. Like I didn't want to talk about anything other than what I was creating, because it was like it was coming through me.
Yes.
It
Absolutely.
was like
Absolutely.
literally, because you're download. I don't know. Sometimes when there would be something I would know, and I would sometimes like sit back and be like, how do I know that?
Right.
It's like, how did I know that? And you just, like, it's all, everything is aligned, with, you're just supposed to bring this forward.
Yeah.
This is the the shift. And
Yeah.
I really feel that with you because of the layers. Like there's so many layers that you're just supposed to bring this forward. You're supposed to have done what you've done to be at this perfect time of where we are with the social unrest and all of those things, to really be, be a woman that people want to look up to, because they respect you. They respect who you are, the way you do your life, the choices that you've made, the education that you have. It's something that no matter who you are, it's admirable. And I really feel a lot of good energy coming to you, and I'm really excited. I'm excited to see your next step. I know you had an exciting meeting this morning. I know you don't want to talk about that, but you are definitely on the trajectory for big things, Hannah, and you deserve it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I know you're going to be doing an offer on our website, right? laviniaerico.com, when your products get back in.
When they get back in, for sure. So more to come on that, and I will definitely keep you guys updated. And I'm working tirelessly to get product produced. So please trust and believe.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much. You guys, we'll see you next Wednesday. I have on 2 young people in their 20s. I'm really excited about this one. They're going to kind of share with you how they were on their trajectory, living outside of the house, getting promoted in their jobs, and then all of a sudden this happens, and what life looks like, and just hear it through their eyes of what they've been going through for the last, and how they're forging forward. So I'm really excited about that talk. All right. Have a great one. And again, Hannah, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.